The Mix 88.5 Property Update, brought to you by the award-winning Tudor Group, developers of Tudor Villas and in the final stages of Tudor Court Condominium, Pratham Nack Soi 2. The Tudor Group, Thai lifestyle, European standards.
Welcome to the Mix 88.5 Property Update on PMTV with my guest, as always, Tim Gladwin from Salmons, and all brought to you by the Tudor Group.
The Mix 88.5 Property Update.
So it's our property update on a Wednesday afternoon. As always, our guest in the studio, Tim Gladwin from Salmons, Thailand. Get hold of Tim at 038 252 588 for the office number, and Patia at salmonsthailand.com. Good afternoon, Tim. How has it been?
Yeah, not too bad. I'm sure it could be worse, and I'm sure those people living in Bangkok right now would tell us that it very obviously can be worse. You know, things have still moved to an extent. Certainly, it's not been a completely dry week, pardon the pun, with regards to deals.
It's okay. I'm laughing because it's radio and I can laugh quietly and surreptitiously at your pun. But unfortunately, the camera's sitting there right there as well, and I can't laugh too loud anymore. I'm going to get caught on camera for laughing. Yes, a dry week. Okay, sorry about that. You go.
No, yeah, it was actually accidental, and then I realised what I'd said. But no, things have been moving to an extent. But of course, you simply have to look where most customers come from in an average week, an average month, and obviously there are very good reasons right now why those many of those customers either might not be here, or they might have far bigger concerns on their mind than looking at buying new real estate. Yeah, certainly. We've talked in recent weeks about the increasing impact of buyers from Bangkok, be they Farang or Thai, and what they're doing in the market here now. And they're playing obviously a much increased role from the one that they played perhaps 2, 3, 4 years ago and more. So obviously those people, right now, most of them are very, very firmly focused on dealing with the floods. You've got a lot of people actually coming down now to stay here. All you hear is people phoning up for month rentals, walking in, have you got anything for a month in this location for this price? Yeah. Developers even coming in and reporting that they're getting an awful lot of inquiries from people looking to rent places in the condominiums they're still building. So there's clearly a big move to escape Bangkok, to get away from the direct effect of the flooding, and a lot of people are coming down here. Someone also told me that there's other people going down to Hua Hin, and obviously, it does reflect in the market, and it has both direct and indirect effects. I'm sure that there are people overseas, maybe people who have been looking to invest from overseas. While I'm sure they will all appreciate that the flooding is a temporary issue, and one that will end, and everything will get back to normal eventually, I can also very well understand that they might say to themselves, well, I'm not going to be looking at Thailand for a little while. It just psychologically, even though it's not going to affect them if they're looking to buy 3, 6 months down the line, a year, whatever, and they're looking to future investments. It's just, if something's going wrong in a country, your tendency is probably to look at something else for a while and not think about it. And I suspect that that's playing a role. Certainly, a lot of our email inquiries on an average week come from overseas. Yeah. It's very common.
So is this going to be a knock-on sort of circumstance now, whereas people are now they were going to do it, but now they're going to delay another 3 to 6 months, or possibly for a longer term than that? Do you think that's going to be off-putting towards what was touted to be quite a good high season coming up?
It could be. It's very hard to say with any degree of certainty right now, because obviously everything is up in the air, and making predictions is very challenging. We don't know how long the floods are going to last. We don't know how significant the sort of fallout from the floods is going to be. So it's all really guesswork at the moment. But one would anticipate that it is likely to have some kind of effect, certainly at the start of high season. If we're basically there. We often talk about high season starting at the start of November, although, as we've suggested recently, it's not a lights on, lights off type of change. It doesn't suddenly go from the end of October when it's quiet and things being crazily busy the 1st of November. But things do start to pick up at the start of November normally. Now, I would anticipate that there's an awful lot of people who might have been planning to come in November who have either cancelled or put back plans to come to Thailand because the images that they're seeing on TV are ones that would be very off-putting.
Yep, I'm sure there's been lots of parents calling up or sending emails saying, well, are you affected by the floods and what's happening? And although I've sent back to my parents and said, no, actually the floods down here, not really been affected. I didn't say that, by the way, you're coming over in a couple of weeks' time and we've got no water to drink actually out of a bottle yet. But no, I've not said that. I've just said, no, directly, we have not really been affected by the floods.
No, and obviously we haven't. In fact, the weather's been reasonably good. The odd shower here and there, but the weather's not been too bad at all the last couple of weeks. Nevertheless, there are increasing indirect effects that are inevitable, not least the number of people coming down from Bangkok. Certainly, when we were on the way to the Matrix party on Saturday night, we, like most people, encountered the ridiculous level of traffic that was all over the place in Pattaya.
I could not believe that. That was mad.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember, even in the middle of high season in years gone by, Christmas, New Year time, the whole of the city, Jomtien included, being quite so busy. Normally, when you're talking about Christmas and New Year, the centre of Pattaya, yeah, that's gridlocked. But you come out to Pattaya and the traffic's usually moving reasonably well.
Yeah.
But not last weekend. Saturday night, the whole of Pattaya and Jomtien was absolutely gridlocked. You couldn't get anywhere. And as I think we discussed on Saturday night, I ended up abandoning my truck on Tepasit Road because you couldn't get anywhere, just in the middle of Tepasit, well, on the side of the road, but halfway up Tepasit Road, and jumping on some motorbikes and heading through what was still horrendously bad traffic, even on small motorbikes, to get to the party.
And you know that there is a lot of underlying problems because after that big downpour, what was it, yesterday, day before, there was still immediate flooding down Soi Sam Country Club where I drove down, less than an hour after the rain had been, maybe half an hour, and it was flooded by at least a foot, maybe 2 foot of water down parts of Soi Sam Country Club. So it's lying around. I know they're saying that it's good news that we've got plenty of water to last us through the next year, but some of it's still in the wrong places.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt that the drainage of a number of areas of Pattaya has been poor for quite a long time. And I think what you tend to find through the course of a very wet, rainy season like we've had, notwithstanding the fact that the Pattaya rainy season is relatively short, I think what you tend to find is that when these rains do fall, the drains that do exist tend to get clogged up. Certainly, relatively short rainstorms now are causing short-term flooding in a lot of areas down at Jomtien on the new second road, along where the sort of beer bar complex is there. Up the back of Jomtien again, there's various roads there that get flooded seemingly within 15-20 minutes of the rain starting. And I think it is to a large extent that there's been so much debris washed down through the drains that a lot of it has stayed there, and the drains are just not as efficient as they normally would be. Normally, that efficiency is not exactly perfect anyway, so the temporary floods do tend to happen here quite quickly.
And that was where most of the water was coming from. It wasn't coming from the skies, it was coming from the ground and out through some of those drainage that was supposed to be taking it away, but it didn't quite happen. So we've not really been affected too much by the floods, but we have been affected on a sort of secondary phase, and we're on the outskirts of it, whereas, like we said, water, buying bottled water, that's sort of disappeared, and a very hard job these days. It's like finding gold somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, as we discussed just before we went on air, you can buy water. I mean, there's a few water factories around Pattaya that tend to make this UV treated water. It's not stuff that I would really want to drink myself, but I think you can probably drink it without too many problems. I think, certainly the UV treatment kills all the bacteria and anything that's going to cause you any significant harm. And a lot of people do drink that because it's obviously a lot cheaper. For those of us who tend to have a preferred bottled water, but be that, Chang, Singhao, whatever. I mean, I think we all tend to have our favourites. I'm a Singhao water drinker, and most people do have their favourites. Those sort of premium bottled waters, my understanding is that people have been driving down from Bangkok in pickups and literally clearing the shelves in the supermarkets down here, so that, if we were in isolation, left on our own, there wouldn't be a problem. But But when you've got, you know, a city of whatever Bangkok is, 10, 12 million people, I'm not sure, and a significant proportion of them, those with cars anyway, are driving down here and taking everything they can off the supermarket shelves, it probably doesn't come as a great surprise that there are big gaping spaces on those very shelves right now.
It's sort of reminiscent of a few Hollywood movies and things like that. When you go into a supermarket, you see, oh, nothing there.
Well, it comes back again to what we've discussed in a different context in recent weeks, i.e. the propensity of humans to panic, and sometimes unnecessarily. You know, you've had people who have been buying enough water to last them 6 months or a year. Now, I suspect that some of those people will be trying to cash in by selling it at a far higher rate than they bought it at, but nevertheless, you do tend to get this panic. Whereas if people actually stayed calm and just bought what they needed, you know, I find it very hard to believe that the government is going to
go around.
Yeah, there's plenty to go around, and I can't believe that the distribution problems that we're obviously encountering now are not going to be solved within 3 or 4 weeks at the absolute outside. You know, the food, we're told, is there. It's in the warehouses. It's just a case of figuring out how to get it out and get it around the country. And certainly, I got an email sent to me that had been sent out by Tesco's apologising, you know, for some of their stores being closed, because obviously the situation in the flooded areas up around Bangkok, Ayutthaya, is far, far worse than it is here. Yeah, and saying that they were dealing with it and they expected to have a solution in place sooner rather than later. Now, maybe that's just talk, but of course they're not making any money if they can't sell stuff. So they're not just doing it for the good of the average man on the street. They're doing it because that's their business and they need to sell.
Yeah. Not really affecting any of us too much, but I did notice that Swenson's was closed. There's no ice cream available for them at the moment, I believe, again, down to distribution. But other than that, we are still okay. The town is still ticking over, doing its normal business, and we're looking forward to a high season, and the property market is sort of in full swing with all sorts of things happening. As you said, we were at that launch the other day, which was a big event in town. Haven't seen one like that for a good few years now, since Raymond Lamb were doing their things years ago, and that's nice to see that people are having confidence within themselves, I think, rather than the market being confident within a certain product. They were extremely confident in their product and putting it out and putting a bit of money behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you go back, and obviously we're all rather concerned with the flooding, its effects, direct and indirect, right now. But, you know, just going back a few short weeks before it was any kind of a big issue down here, as we discussed at the time, the market was really doing very, very well. It was very busy, very active, lots of sales, lots of deals. Notwithstanding the fact that, of course, it was still low season, it was still rainy season, so a lot of reasons why it shouldn't have been busy, but it was. Therefore, you do tend to say, well, obviously, notwithstanding the fact that things can change very quickly in any year, one would anticipate that the biggest single problem right now is indeed the flooding, and you have to probably go back to before that to get indications as to what things are going to be like as and when the flooding passes us by. I mean, certainly you can go back, when was it that they occupied the airport? A couple of years ago now, when the yellow shirts occupied the airport. People were predicting that it would have an effect on tourism to Thailand for years to come. But of course then the occupation ended and tourist figures were back up to normal levels and actually beyond within about 2 months. And certainly that is more in line with my actual experience. I tend to find that newsmakers always talk about these lasting effects of whether it's the floods or the occupation of the airport, the riots and you know, anti-government demonstrations in the centre of Bangkok. But then when things settle down, I always find that actually people tend to have very, very short memories. They forget about these things and they move on, and things are back to normal far quicker than you'd ever expect. And I anticipate that will be the situation with the floods as well. Right now we're in the middle of it and it seems all very bad. But people forget very quickly. And, you know, if you're talking about people coming on holiday after Christmas, hopefully the floods will have cleared up well, sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
And I honestly think that things will be back to normal. I think that the end of year will reveal that, again, tourist numbers to Thailand have increased very significantly again this year. And I think next year will be a new year. Well, inevitably.
There's another pun you've had come up with already. That's 2 in one show.
Indeed, inevitably. But obviously, the turn of the year is a time when you can you tend to look forward rather than back. It's an opportunity to sort of reassess the situation, and I think the fact that the end of the year is so close, it gives us an opportunity to say, once the floods are behind us, that was last year.
Yeah.
Now here we are, a new year and a fresh start, and I think that will be very likely to be what happens.
Because I think that the floods are not just endemic to us here now in Thailand, because over the last couple of days they've been complaining about floods in the UK and some severe weather there as well, and other places. So it's just, it is a cycle that's going to pass by and hopefully not leave behind too much damage and still people there. But confidence in the market, I think, is still there, as we can tell by lots of off-plan developments being bought rather readily, including yourself buying some.
Yes, as I may have mentioned a week or two ago, I'm not sure. I bought a place in Amazon a couple of 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I mentioned that in my my last e-newsletter that went out. And a few people actually came back and they said, what was your reasoning behind making the purchase? And so, I thought it might be useful to sort of go through that.
Yeah.
I mean, the way I look at it, as we've, again, topics which we've touched on in recent weeks, the fact that in 2010, notwithstanding the very significant social upheaval in Bangkok in particular, tourist numbers went up nearly 15% year on year in Thailand. A very, very healthy increase indeed. All the reports indicate that a similar level of increase will take place again this year. Obviously, with that's more than 30% in 2 years. It's a huge increase. All the talk, if you read the Tourist Authority of Thailand's predictions, they are along the lines of these increases are going to only increase. And of course you can understand why. There was a news report recently that as of 2011, I think, China will now be the biggest single country in terms of tourist arrivals, with I think about 1.44 million for the year. That's fundamentally changed. It wasn't long ago when they weren't even in the top 10. I think Korea was up there. Obviously, the UK was up there. Germany, the traditional tourist nations here in Thailand. But now you've got these new countries. India is another example. We've been through this in recent weeks. But it's got to give you confidence, because right now the traditional suppliers of tourists here are not providing the level of tourists that they did. Not because those tourists don't like Thailand anymore, far from it, just because obviously the economy is really tough there, and they simply, there aren't so many people in a position to be able to take holidays in countries like Thailand. But as and when things turn around, one would anticipate that they will return. So what this basically means is you've got tourist numbers increasing, you've got a shortage of these really nice resort-style hotels here. Yeah. If you look at the hotels in much of Pattaya, a lot of them are down places like Soi 7, Soi 8. They are on very small plots, and if they've got a pool, it's a very small pool.
And the space around the pool is not much there. And
absolutely, not the sort of place you'd really want to stay. So once you've got these places that, like Amazon, and again, this is something we've discussed, you've got developments with a lot of space, huge, absolutely enormous lagoon-style swimming pools. In the case of Amazon, 3-tier with waterfalls between it, islands, green rooftop areas, salas, massage areas. These are the sorts of things that people want to come on holiday to Thailand to experience.
Yeah.
So it's really quite an attractive proposition. When you look at the price of them, they are very, very good value for money. You're talking in Amazon in particular, obviously that's where I bought. For about 1.4 million baht, I bought a place that is fully furnished. Now, at 35 square meters, I don't think it's the kind of place that most people would want to stay in long term, i.e. 1 year, 2 year contracts, leases. However, when you're talking about the short-term rental market, I think it's exactly the sort of place that would suit people coming here for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. And as we know, that's here in Pattaya, there's an awful lot of people that do come here for that length of time. And that's only one option. The figures, as I look at them, I look at similar condos, albeit not in as nice developments, not even nearly as nice developments. Right now, a similar unit would easily rent for 12,000 baht per month. No problem at all. Yeah. If you put it on the market,
it's quite cheap, really.
Yeah, you get it rented out in no time. So that's, I look at that as a worst case scenario. On that kind of level, you're looking at 10% per annum return on the purchase price, and that's probably after costs. The other option, of course, is when you buy at the beginning of a development, so long as you're comfortable with the developer, and Matrix Guana have been around for a while. Their very catchphrase now is, we deliver our promises.
Yep.
They have a very good track record of doing exactly that, building what they say they're going to build, building it within the kind of time frame that they say they're going to build it. So if you're confident in that developer, as I am with Matrix Guana, you can buy at the beginning, and going back to similar developments in the similar location, units that are already finished and built in similar developments, but not as nice ones. They're selling for probably 1.79, 1.89 million baht for a similar unit in the less salubrious development in foreign quota. And so, obviously, the other option you may well have is, as and when the building is close to being finished or finished, you've got the option to sell. And the likelihood is, based on current figures, that you could make a reasonable capital appreciation by doing that. And if you don't, you've got the option of renting it out based on the things that I've said before, which appears to be, in all the circumstances, a limited risk, a very limited risk. It appears to be a good business opportunity. Now, all that has to be taken on an overall investment concept. Now, I think right now, with the world in a difficult place, I think most people would agree that keeping all your assets in cash in the bank is probably a dangerous game.
Yes.
We're talking about hyperinflation. We're talking one of the options to cure the European sovereign debt crisis is simply to print more money to pay off the lenders, which is ridiculously short-sighted, but nevertheless one of the two main options on the table, and I believe the one that France is pushing for quite strongly. So there has to be significant potential for inflation. And if you're talking about, I don't know, 100 billion euro or more, that must have the potential for causing significant inflation around the world, because the increased spending power that will put on the table is absolutely enormous. So I think keeping all your assets in cash right now is a dangerous game. If you can find a good real estate investment or two as part of a diversified investment plan, then that's got to be a good way to go. And certainly from a personal perspective, that's something that I've taken into account, and I need to do more so. I think I need to get a bigger property portfolio and also look at a few other investment opportunities as well.
So it's still a confidence factor in the market as well. So you're not just looking at the numbers and how things are going. You've still got confidence in the market that it is going to continue to grow. It is going to continue to be a good place to be, and investing is still one of those things you can do in the property market here in the Eastern Seaboard in Pattaya. Yeah,
what I think is very, very positive is the fact that here in Pattaya, over the last 3 years or so, some of the biggest traditional sources of visitors here, tourists here, have been hit very, very hard. We're talking about particularly the blue-collar individuals from the UK, Germany, the rest of Europe. Those are the sorts of individuals who have been hit amongst the hardest. And yet, tourist numbers and tourist arrivals here have gone up because the Asian market, to a large extent, has moved in to fill the void. And actually, more than fill the void, numbers are actually going up, and going up significantly. So,
and are they the ones that still seem to have a bit more money to throw around as well? Look at the Singapore, Hong Kong crowd, the Indians that are coming over as well. They seem to have a lot more money to throw around. Taiwan obviously got plenty of money as well, and certain Chinese have plenty of money, so they're not afraid of getting involved in the Thai market either.
Well, that's right. Again, I can't remember whether we touched on it or not last week. But this new law in China, whereby Chinese residents can now only own a maximum of 2 properties in mainland China. There's a vast amount of money in mainland China, a vast amount of new wealth, on a scale that doesn't exist anywhere else in the world. The number of new millionaires each year in China is increasing exponentially. So there's a vast amount of money there, and now they're basically being told you can't spend it on real estate in your own country.
So come and spend it here.
Well, according to the experts in the country, all of a sudden there's a massive demand for overseas real estate investment opportunities within it.
Good stuff. Now we saw the launch of that Matrix Iguana this week, which was 2 launches, both the Amazon, where you've brought in, and the Vision. So they're both coming up, and they will develop and deliver their promises. What's the time frame? Another year for that, or 2 years before it comes to fruition?
I think Amazon, it's due to be finished in, I think, about 2.5 years.
Okay, so they're both coming up, and in pretty good locations.
Yeah, I mean, Jomtien, this goes back to something we went through probably three or 4 months ago. Jomtien is a vastly underdeveloped market that is now being developed rapidly. You know, you drive along the new Jomtien Second Road, which, as we anticipated, has become the catalyst for a lot of new development within Jomtien. And you've got new developments springing up all the way along. You've got a huge new development by, I think, AD Condo, a couple of big towers there. You've got the Atlantis development, which is
the party this week.
Yes, indeed. I think on Saturday the 29th.
Again, one of those, oops, what are we going to do? Going to go to that one, or are we going to go down to Horseshoe Point, because that's Halloween this weekend as well. So we got to work out where we're going to be for that one.
Yeah, certainly. I suspect my son's protestations may play a significant part in that, because I think one of the teachers from his school, and more than that, his year, is one of the organisers of the Horseshoe Point event.
So he's obliged a little bit to go down there.
Yeah, perhaps so. So it might be a little bit tough to get along to the Atlantis party, unfortunately, but nevertheless...
Maybe we could make it to the cocktail reception and just say, hello guys, nice, yes, thanks, good place, see you later.
Yeah, that may be it. So, although, of course, if the traffic is anything like it was last weekend, it could take us 2 hours to get there and 2 hours back.
Then we just have to do a Yui and say no, thanks.
Indeed.
And then the day before, there is another one being launched, isn't there?
Yes.
A new showroom coming up.
And again, along that same stretch of, just off the same stretch of Jomtien's new Second Road, and another one of the new developments has been launched there that is leading to Jomtien becoming much deeper than it has been traditionally with the Beach Road area, and that's Heights Holdings, their Laguna Beach Resort. I think the launch party for the showrooms is this Friday at 4 p.m. and I think anyone who wants to go along is invited to do so.
Okay, so that's another one there. And we sort of got onto this last week, or we tried to get onto it. It turned out we had enough time just to tell you about the property of the week, which was part of the park condominium and that development. And we were going to touch on it, but never did. We're looking about a development that was started and then stopped, and now it seems to be underway again.
Yeah, it's the park condominium is one that has been developed by the same people who developed the very popular Jomtien Park Villas housing development, which is actually just across the road from the location for the park. And it was launched a few years ago in a sort of fanfare of publicity. Very nice development, albeit the nature of the development, certainly in terms of the size of the units, somewhat different to what you tend to see around with the more recently released developments. I think the one-bedroom units there are 110 square meters, whereas obviously now, as we've discussed on many occasions, a lot of the developments offer one-bedroom units of 35 to 40 square meters, so a fundamentally different product.
Which is always nice. I do like those bigger places.
Yeah, well, I think in the long term, these are the sorts of places that people would want to live full-time in, whether it's to rent for a year or two or to actually buy a place and use it as their own personal residence. I don't imagine there would be lots of people who would be queuing up to live full-time in a 35 square meter condo. It's a fundamentally different product, a different attraction, a different market it's looking to appeal to. But with the bigger units, like in the park, you've got something that is genuinely a home. And like I say, it was launched. It did very well. Initially, it sold very well. They did an auction of some units, which the same as they did for Jomtien Park Villas. But then, obviously, as the market deteriorated, they ran into financing problems. I'm not sure of all the details, but obviously, construction slowed or maybe even stopped. Anyway, they contacted me a couple of weeks ago, and they said, "Look, we've now sorted. We've got new finance in place."
Back on track.
Back on site. A lot of building A which is the building obviously first built, has now been transferred to individual owners. Building B and Building B1, I think construction has restarted already. I've not been down to have a look myself, but that's certainly what they were telling me. Like I say, the new financing is all signed, sealed and delivered, so I am told. And they're anticipating completion of those 2 blocks, I think, within 6 to 9 months. Although this being Thailand, of course, one wouldn't be altogether surprised if it took a little bit longer than that.
As long as it's not like the movie where the guy says 6 to 9 months. He says, how many? 69 months? You're joking. All right, then, let's go to finance. This week, it seems like everything is going up. The pound has gone from last week at 48.2 to a nice little jump of 49.2 this week. So the pound is rather a good place to be. The US dollar, on the other hand, is not, having dropped from 31.6 last week to 30.8 this week. I think nobody really likes the US dollar anymore. It's one of those, how much confidence do we have in the current president, and who could be the new president, as to how much confidence we've got in the US dollar?
Yeah, I mean, so far as the British pound is concerned, I can only anticipate that me having booked my Christmas holiday to go home, I'm now being punished because I get less pounds for my baht. So I presume that's probably played a major role in that. I too, these things do tend to happen to me in that way.
Well, they have to make it more expensive also for next year with the Olympics, so they've got to get the pound a little bit stronger to make sure we spend bucket loads when we're in the UK for that. The Aussie dollar continues its way up again after it had that little glitch a month or so ago. 31.5 last week. It's now almost up to 31.99. So the Aussie dollar back to being a good currency again. And as always, we got no idea why.
No, it does seem to be, a gambler's currency is perhaps the way to describe it at the moment, because it has really bounced up and down an awful lot in the last few weeks. No idea why.
And the euro, hopefully instilling some confidence over the next couple of days, starting off today. The euro from last week, 42.2, up to 42.9 this week, which I still wouldn't want to be a euro person, but it seems to be holding okay.
Yeah, obviously there's ongoing negotiations right now as to how to solve the sovereign debt crisis. Increasing reports of Italy's position becoming ever more precarious. I think, again, it's jumping up and down a little bit. I wouldn't necessarily have too much faith in it because certainly if the French get their way and these very significant qualitative easing measures are put in place, it could get a little bit ugly, one would think.
And the whole thing could collapse, which is not what you wanted. Now, if you're buying your $1 million baht condo this week in US dollars, it's going to cost you 32,409. In pounds, as we've got a stronger pound now, it's only going to cost you a mere 20 grand, 20,225 quid to get yourself a $1 million baht condo this week. And just because the euro was doing okay, I just thought I'd throw the euro in there as well now. 23,281 euros gets you your 1 million baht condo this week. Not enough time to get into the property of the week, so I think we can save that one, because that's a cracking looking property of the week we'll have a look at, and we'll save that for next week as we're running out of time. It's the property update at Mix 88.5. As always, our guest in the studio is Tim Gladwin from Solomons. Thanks, Tim, as always, and we'll see you next week, same time, same place.
Thank you, Russ.
And if you've been tuning in on the radio, we'll see you same time, same place next week. If it's TV, it's every Friday on Pattaya Mail TV.
You've been watching the Mix 88.5 property update on PMTV, brought to you by the Tudor Group. We'll be back same time, same place next week. See you then.
The Mix 88.5 property update, brought to you by the award-winning Tudor Group, developers of Tudor villas and in the final stages of Tudor Court Condominium, Pratam Nak Soi 2. The Tudor Group, Thai lifestyle, European standards.